Hi, guys. Welcome to the course and thanks for joining. Wholesaling Real Estate in California, Understanding the Financials for 2023 and 2024. I'm going to go ahead and move this little recorder thing over to the side. So, the whole purpose of this video and this spreadsheet is to help new wholesalers that are just coming in to the California market on how to better structure their offer price so that they could get maximum profits on their wholesale fee. And so that you can make the offer right the first time and not have to go back to the realtor or the homeowner and redo your offer again because you miscalculated your numbers. And another myth that I would kind of like to bust here, because I keep seeing it time and time again, usually on like YouTube and Instagram, is you'll have some wholesalers making videos saying, for example, let's use simple numbers. They'll say, like, hey guys, so for wholesaling, all you have to do is you make an offer price at 90,000 and you wholesale it to the end buyer at 100,000, and then the end buyer sells it for 200,000. So you make 10,000 and then the end buyer makes 100,000. That is not how it works. So I want to get in here and I want to help explain to people on how much money the end buyer actually makes. So let's figure that out, and then we'll reverse engineer on where you need to come in with your offer price to either the realtor or the homeowner, and then the price that you're going to give to the end buyer so that you could create a win-win situation, and you can understand what kind of numbers they're looking at so that if either you have to go to the seller with a lower offer or a higher offer, or if your wholesale fee is too big or too small. All right, so let's get started. So right here on this spreadsheet, this is going to be a sample spreadsheet. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and give you guys the sample one that we're looking at right now, and I'm also going to give you a blank one for you to go ahead and start using on your own. So with that being said, since we're focused on this California market, is what I did is I broke this up into 5 different locations. So I did San Jose, California, which is gonna kind of represent the Bay Area. Right now, the median home price in Silicon Valley is 1.4 million. And on this sample, I did 1.2 million because that was the first house that I flipped. Sacramento, the median home price I think is around like 500,000. Riverside, 600. Los Angeles is 1.3 million, and Stockton is around 430,000. So those are the numbers we're going to be using on the spreadsheet, because every different part of that market, you're going to have a different profit margin. So depending on how you learn this, most guys will tell you have to make your offer at, and when you wholesale it, it has to be at 70% of after repair value. But that's not the case for every market and every location, because it just wouldn't make sense with the numbers. So is what I want to do is try to break this down on the spreadsheet and give you guys a tool to better understand where you need to be with your numbers. Okay, so over here I have the link. You could put any sort of link in this little column. So if you have a house and you're using Zillow and it gives you the beds, baths, square footage, I usually like to keep track of the link just so I could always click on Zillow and I know exactly the details on the property. I have a little cell for your margin. So over here, rule of thumb in the Bay Area, if you're going to wholesale it, 30% is a good margin for you to wholesale your contract to the end buyer at a 30% margin for them. Now I have a little cell for the name. I put my first mentor in there, Jason Boozy. This is a sample house, so this is not a real house number, but it's just a sample sheet. So for the purchase price, I have 840,000. Okay, and for the ARV, I have 1.2 million. And for the repairs, I have 80,000. That's how much I put into the repairs on the first house that I flipped. And those numbers are pretty much kind of sort of still the same right now. We'll get into the repair numbers in a little bit. I created a little, what's it called? So it's a little, I created this little legend for you guys right here at the bottom, and we'll get into the repair numbers in a little bit. But right now I have 80,000. So 80,000 is pretty much, depending on the square footage and what kind of condition the place is, 80,000 is what we put into this house. Okay, so we'll get into that in a little bit down at the bottom. For the realtor fees, rule of thumb, it'll be good to kind of keep this at 6% until you better understand your buyers. So now it's kind of interesting because I'm going to be speaking to two different people in this video. There's going to be some investors that are experienced, and then there's going to be some realtors that are probably experienced realtors, and they want to learn how to wholesale a house or flip a house and just better understand their numbers. So now, with that being said, I'm going to start speaking to the people that are new to this. So rule of thumb is you want to try to keep this at like 6%. Now, depending on how experienced you are, you're going to know your buyer, you're going to know your buyers more than the average person. So say, for example, I have a buyer, the first person I wholesaled the house to was actually an investor who flips houses, and he was a realtor. So in that case, this 6%, it wouldn't really make sense because he was an agent and he was going to relist it himself, and whatever commissions he made was just going to be more profit for him, or he was just going to do maybe like whatever the broker requires. Let's say the broker needs a bare minimum of $1,000, then that'll be his commissions, $1,000, and it'll just go to the broker. So this 6% number is just kind of like a rule of thumb. And the way it works is that if you're dealing with a listing agent, usually, let's just say, let's just go conservative on the high end. Let's say the listing agent usually wants 3% of the purchase price, and the buyer's agent wants 3% of the purchase price. So this number applies on the back end when the house flipper hires a realtor as a listing agent, and then when it gets listed on the MLS and a homeowner comes and buys it, then another 3% goes to the buyer's agent. So $72,000 gets cut out of the investor's profit margin. Okay. Now, I have 85% for the hard money loan. Some guys, 85% is a good median number. Like right now, I'm getting 90%, and there's a lot of packages. There's a lot of hard money guys out there offering 100, meaning 100% financing, 100% for the purchase price, 100% for the renovation. But right now, let's just use a median number of 85%. And we're going to use a median. Next tab is total loan. So total loan is pretty much the hard money loan plus the 100% rehab. So the total is $749,000. And the reason why we have this is for the next cell column is because most of these guys are going to be paying about 10% on this loan. And the way the 10% works is the hard money lender charges them 10% on $794,000 annually. So that's going to be around 80. It's going to be 790,400. So let's round it up to 80,000. So that's going to be for the annual amount. But when these guys flip these homes, they don't want to hold it that long. So on average, I have 3 months right here. You guys can use this number. Everything I have on here is a median number that you want to use. And this is what they're going to be paying on the monthly basis, $6,616. And the total holding cost for 3 months is going to be close to around $20,000. And the point here is what the hard money lenders charge these guys just to borrow the money. So pretty much it's a fee to borrow the money. So on average, most guys are probably, depending on their experience, are paying 1 to 3 points. So I put 2 points in here. So they're going to have to, up front, they're going to have to pay close to $16,000. Then is what I have for right here is for the acquisition cost. So now there's two words that people tend to use that you may hear, and I don't want you guys to get confused out there. So I just want to explain this. This is the whole purpose of behind this sheet is so that you guys can better understand the numbers. So acquisition cost, also sometimes they call it closing costs. But other people also call the real estate agent fees also closing cost as well. So there's kind of two closing costs, right? Now, there's some people that just use a percentage for closing costs, and I like to use precision. So in this spreadsheet, we're going to have precision. So now usually, when I acquire a property in this price range, usually I have about $4,660 in closing costs, which we can also call acquisition fees. And usually within these fees is title and escrow fees, and the flippers usually have to pay 1 year of home insurance up front. So that can fluctuate between, let's say $800 to $1,400. So that is included in the acquisition cost is the insurance, then also the title and escrow fees. And next, we're going to be moving on to the staging costs. So on average, if you're going to get a good stager, now it fluctuates, and I'm just using medium numbers here. It fluctuates between a small house to a large house, and also how many rooms you're going to stage, and also the quality of the stager. What kind of materials, what kind of furnishing are they going to use? So on average, I usually spend between 3,200 max 4,000 on staging costs. So with all that being said, the total amount of money invested with the hard money loan and the down payment, the staging cost, everything, so that flipper is going to be in at $1,035,000, right? So the net profits is which is going to calculate all this stuff. It's going to come up. So the net profits, which is the difference, it's all going to come up to $164,000. So on this flip, that investor should make somewhere around $164,000. Now again, it's just a rough number. It's going to fluctuate because, for example, me, if I'm flipping this, is what I did on my first flip is I listed it myself, and I'm not even a realtor. And I used a flat fee MLS listing service, and it only cost me $800. I did open house myself, and I was able to pocket myself an additional $32,000. So it really depends on, that's what I was saying, it really depends on how well you know your end buyer, because if they have some of these tricks and tips up their sleeves, these numbers are going to change. Another thing too is that some of the house flippers tend to be general contractors. So maybe instead of it costing them $80,000, maybe it's going to cost them $50,000 or $60,000. Who knows, right? So if they have their own crew or if they're just going to sub it all out, it just fluctuates. So, the better you know your end buyer, the better you're going to be able to tweak these numbers. So now let's go back to where it really matters, where it involves you. So, now down to making an offer on the property and where. So first and foremost, you have to be within the margins, and in this case, 30% margin. It does make sense in the Bay Area. So now I'll buy this at a 30% margin all day long. Okay, but where's your wholesale fee? So now at a 30% margin, I need to be at $840,000, right? So in order for you to get a wholesale fee, now that you can see the type of money I'm going to be making on this, if you come in at an offer to the realtor or the homeowner at $816,000, your wholesale fee is going to be $24,000 because you'll wholesale the house over to me or the end buyer at $840,000. And right here at 816, you have a $24,000 wholesale fee. Now, is where things get a little bit tricky is when we start getting into the lower price ranges. And this is where this legend right here at the bottom is really going to help you out. So if if we go to another location in California, for example, we're going to look at Sacramento, right? So I grouped some of these areas together: Sacramento, Stockton, Fresno, Tulare, and Bakersfield, because their median home price is averaging around $500,000. So now in the Bay Area, 3% margins make sense. But when you go to other areas, for example, let's say we're going to Sacramento and the median home price is $500,000, it's going to be a little bit tough to get a wholesale fee that makes sense for an end buyer if you're using a 30% margin. The reason why is because most end buyers or flippers, they like to make at least a 10% return. All right, so a 10% return on, let's say, $450,000 is going to be $50,000. Okay, so most guys would be looking for that. But if you're coming in and you're trying to wholesale the property to them at a 30% margin, and so that 30% margin is going to look something, it's going to look a whole lot smaller. So is what I like to use is I use a margin calculator. And if you type in 500,000 and you put in 30%, it'll give you 350. Just ignore this profit thing at the bottom. And if you want the link, I put it right here in the notes. Right there, you just go ahead and go to that link. So if we did a 30% margin, right, which is going to be 350, and then if we go over to the profits, now that dramatically changed from 50,000 down to 16,000. So if a wholesaler brought me a property and they're like, "Hey Zach, I found this. It's a 30% margin, ARV 500,000, purchase price 350," and I ran my numbers, I crunched my comps, and I'm like, "Okay, yeah, this makes sense." And then I put it into my spreadsheet and I see my net profit's going to be 16,000. I'm gonna be like, it's gonna be a little bit harder. It's gonna be a lot harder to get an investor to pick up one of these properties. So usually like a rule of thumb is when you're making offers on homes that are around the 300 price range, you're gonna need a larger profit margin. So I'm gonna go ahead and fix this number back to where it was. So moving forward, that's pretty much how you use a spreadsheet. I have different locations, and I kind of gave you guys just a little bit of an idea of where you want to be with your margins in these different markets. So in Sacramento, you probably want to be you probably want to wholesale it somewhere around a 36% margin. If you're in Inland Empire, Riverside County, you're safe to wholesale it around the 30% margin. And Los Angeles, which has another high ARV, you're safe to wholesale it at the 30% margin. Then when you're in Stockton and Fresno, you're going to need a bigger profit margin. Because again, going back to the margin calculator and the number that I showed you, if this margin gets any smaller than 36%, it's just going to be a real small ROI for the house flipper. So you're going to have bigger, you're going to have a bigger margin for those locations. Okay. So I gave you guys this little legend here, and the purchase price, exactly what I was just saying. If it's less than 300,000, you want a larger margin, for example, 36%. If it's greater than 400,000, a margin of 32% or greater is good, and that extra 2% is your wholesale fee. Now, when it comes to construction costs and you're trying to analyze a property, I get asked this question a lot, so I figured I'll throw it in here for you guys. I've done all kinds of flips. I've done small projects. I've done big projects. So on average, when you're dealing with a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, that's around 1,200 square feet. If it's just a cosmetic rehab, it's going to be around 55,000. If it's like an average rehab that needs a little bit more than cosmetics, it's going to be around 80,000. And a heavy rehab with like roof and foundation could usually be around 120 to 160,000. For very big properties, usually these are homes like up in the hillsides, like a 5-bed, 3-bath, 3,000 square feet. A cosmetic rehab is going to be around 80,000. And the reason why is because you have to cover more bedrooms, more bathrooms, more floor, more paint. There's just more, right? So the rehab is going to be somewhere around 80,000. Average 120. A heavy is going to be 160, and then I have a two bedroom, which is going to be a lot smaller. A two bedroom, one bath, around 800 square feet. Usually these cosmetic rehabs go for around 45,000, and an average rehab's around 65,000, and a heavy rehab's around 70,000. So I hope this spreadsheet really helps. You guys can go in here, start playing with the numbers. Some of you guys that are a little bit more experienced, you're going to be able to better understand how to utilize these numbers. Some of you guys that are new, I'll just stick to exactly what I put here. This is primarily for you guys, to try to help you. So go ahead, stick with those numbers. If an investor or a rehabber tells you, instead of it being 80,000, it's going to be 50,000, you could just go ahead and come over here and start plugging in numbers, and you could kind of see what your end buyer is looking at. So I hope that helps, and let me know if you guys close your first deal, or if you close any deals from this. I'd love to hear about it. You can go ahead and find me on Instagram at ZachRoss_RE. All right, guys, take care.